Hey everybody, and if there are good guys in the world, and if they're more specifically out there, like waiting to meet us or not. And I was thinking about what I wanted to type, and I was just thinking about how much I have to say, and I thought, I just want to talk to them instead. And I don't necessarily think that this is unrelated to the receiving practice that we're going to be kicking into gear, because so much of what I'm noticing is that a lot of our unhealed, rightfully wounded work is around masculinity and around really letting the masculine take up space in our life. And I, as you can probably tell, she says in her pink sweater, I'm devoted to the feminine, to the divine feminine, to uncovering the feminine, to making it okay and safe to be feminine, no matter what your sexual orientation is. It's not really about that, but about, how in our world do we not leave space for the feminine, for women, for anyone who identifies as a woman, basically for anyone who's not a man. And yet, I have found deeply related to that work is healing my relationship to masculinity too, to trusting men, to thinking that there are good men, to feeling like men could be an ally to me in my work, even as my work is so devoted to liberation for women. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that, because I'm somebody who has always been surrounded by a lot of masculine energy. I grew up as the only girl in a family with 5 brothers. I just had a cat jump off of me. I had 5 brothers. I have always been really close with my dad. I've always been close with my stepdad. So I grew up with a lot of healthy masculine energy around me. And I think this was probably connected to that. I always had a lot of male friends, and usually more men than women. And I just got really comfortable with it, even though I used to joke that that's why I became a women's studies major and a women's empowerment coach. I was sort of like, let me go study how to be a woman, because I literally don't know, because I've been surrounded by guys all this time. And, I clearly am a very feminine person. But I think that I really was set up to trust guys, to trust men, to feel like, my strength as a woman and as a girl was supported by all these men. I was also pretty close when we would see them with my dad's brothers. So I remember this trip that they took me on when I graduated from high school, where my dad and I went hiking kind of around the Rockies, I think, and my 2 uncles were there. And I just felt really grateful that I had these very positive, strong male kind of presences in my life. And like so many women, I've also had really negative experiences with men. I think that a lot of us, whether we identify as survivors of trauma or not, are holding in our system a lot of distrust and a lot of harm that comes from a very real place. So for some of us, including for me, there are direct incidences where we can trace back our feelings of suspicion with men to specific things that happened, specific cases of sexual assault, specific nights, specific moments, specific comments. Maybe you can even still remember the first time you were walking down the street and got catcalled, or the first time someone touched you without your permission, or the first time that you felt violated or you felt unsafe. Or even, and this is true for so many of my clients, it may not be that something happened, but the fact that you've been worried about it your whole life is its own kind of low-grade trauma in the body. So the fact that you probably change where you walk at night, or don't go certain places, or don't park in a certain place, or you're thinking about it, trying to avoid harm. I've talked about this before, but a scholar that I really like, Catherine McKinnon, writes about how this impacts college students, right? Because college-aged girls are going to be unable to stay at the library as late as their male counterparts. Or if they are, they're distracted by worrying that when they walk home at 1 a.m, it's not actually safe for them. And she's basically arguing in that moment, like, we don't really have a way of thinking about how that impacts like academic performance or something like that, that there is like impact, and some people even identify as trauma with just like the air we breathe, let alone when you're also processing your own history with guys that may not be great. How many of us have had a bad breakup? How many of us have gone through a divorce that got really messy? How many of us have seen what happens when that moment kind of shifts? And this is what, was coming up in the comments. There was that feeling of like, well, they all seem good until you realize they're not. And that shift feels familiar, right? Someone who's suddenly like, this isn't charming anymore. I can't trust you anymore. It doesn't feel good anymore. And I think that really what we're saying is that that's a moment where we feel let down by masculinity, let down by specific guys, but also maybe guys in general, and feeling like it just adds, it's kind of like, just another thing it's piling on. You may have your own history with assault, your own heartbreak and drama, your own like thing that you need to heal. And then you add to that living in a patriarchy where your voice as a woman isn't even valued. Men are automatically prioritized and considered to be the neutral. And there's this low grade and also acute violence that you're having to hopscotch your way through all the time. And then on top of that, you're being asked to somehow stay open and vulnerable, soft, charming, to go on Tinder as if like it's not taking your life in your hands in some ways every time. I get it. And I am not trying to gaslight you and be like, everything is fine. I actually think that's one of the biggest differences between me and some of the other love, sex, and relationship coaches that I follow. No one who went through like my training with me, we're all amazing. But, some that I follow that are just like from another school of thought, or maybe have a little bit more of like an old-fashioned approach. And it feels like there's just a lot of advice that's like, just swallow your anger. Just swallow whatever's not feeling good. Just don't talk about it. Don't bring that up. Don't be a feminist. Don't be weird. Don't be bitchy. Just like kind of hide. Obviously, that's the opposite of my advice. My program's called Uncover. I am all about the not hiding. And that includes your anger, and that includes your disappointment and bitterness and rage. And you deserve to have places where that gets to come out, and you deserve to have the tools that let you release it, like feel it, release it, and find ways to honor it that don't end up poisoning, yourself on a date with somebody who you actually like, or letting the fear and the harm from the past keep you from being open to the kind of love that you actually want.